I never lose, either I win or I learn. Those are my only options, to whomever it may concern. About to be a hot topic, play with fire, you get burned. Ain't nobody give me nothing, whatever I got, better I earn. I never lose, but I learn. I either win or I
Thank you for
learn.
listening to the
Those are my
Strong
only
AF
options.
podcast.
This episode is brought to you by our Weight Loss Transformation Masterclass. After spending over 30 years of my life being obese and dealing with chronic constipation issues, I decided to get my certification in fitness, nutrition, and wellness to empower myself to lose over 70 pounds and keep it off.
Watching my brother and dad have a heart attack within weeks of each other, I knew I had to make a change, but I wasn't sure what to do. After researching and studying to get my certification in fitness, nutrition, and weight loss management, I was able to use this knowledge I gained to lose over 80 pounds and keep it off.
Now we're passionate about helping others to avoid the same mistakes that we made and changing the world through holistic health and wellness. So our approach is focused on mindset because overall health, including our mental health, means everything to us.
Imagine waking up with more energy than you imagined possible, no longer worrying about digestive issues and bloating.
We're here to show you how to ditch the fad diets and make small changes in your lifestyle, which will make a massive impact on your quality of life.
These are changes that you will be able to pass on for generations to come. Go to veganstrongandfit.com/masterclass today to sign up for your free masterclass and get started on a happier, healthier journey.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Strong AF podcast. I'm Ashley,
I'm Yuri.
and today we are so excited to have a special guest on with us, Courtney Andersen, who is a sober coach, podcast host, and your personal sober cheerleader. She's the founder of National Sober Day, and that is on September 14th, and the founder of Sober Vibes, which is an online support community for recovery and sober curious women of all ages. She's a wife, a cat mom to her little fur pants Fiona, and a lover of all Bravo shows, personal development, being in the flow, fall time in pure Michigan, and travel. The F word. I love that. Sweet treats, being kind, and laughing at every single chance that she can. Her favorite day of life is August 18th, 2012, because that was the day that she finally stopped the madness of addiction and started to do some real living. Welcome, Courtney. We're so happy to have you on.
Thanks, guys. I'm excited to be here. Excited to chat with you.
So tell us a little bit about your journey, because I know that you have a long story with your addiction and kind of how you overcame that and how that led to your sober coaching.
Okay. Well, like you said in the intro, my favorite day of my life of the year each since it's happened, but it's August 18th of 2012. That's when I decided to start living a life. For 10 years prior to that, I was stuck in a very toxic relationship with alcohol. One that started off very, very innocent. I started drinking at 19. I didn't drink in those high school years because I was very against alcohol. I smoked pot, tried mushrooms, ecstasy, but just drinking was not in that for me. And it wasn't until I was 19 that's when I fell in love with it. I live in the suburbs of Detroit, so you can go over to Canada. It's like a 20-minute car ride, and their drinking age is 19. So we used to go over there and whoop it up at the bars. And from 19, and I just remember that first time going over there, and I just fell in love with how alcohol made me feel, being out. It was very social. I let loose. I was kind of shy and quiet growing up. So I just felt like this really let me be me. And, it took the shyness out of me. And I just I just fell in love with it. And then it eventually came something very toxic. It started off innocently, came something very different around the age of 24, 25-ish, where I knew I had a drinking problem. And I think for anybody who has a substance abuse problem, some type of addiction, I think they know.
Mm-hmm.
Internally, I think they know. It's just whether or not they want to, address that or not, because anybody can get sober. But when it comes to the recovery process, you really find out why you chose to numb out all of that, and those feelings come up in that. So I think for any addiction, you really truly know. So at that point of my life, I knew, I had experimented then with cocaine, got into cocaine for a couple of years. My drinking would lead to, I wasn't an everyday drinker, but when I did drink, it was binge. I could go. There was no off switch. Like some people, a lot of people have normal relationships with alcohol where they can have like a drink and be done. And that wasn't the case for me. It was like that first drink, and almost like it revved me up. Like it was just like, okay, I want more. So I would end up in a lot of functioning blackouts. And that's just kind of how my life led for 10 years. And then I got into past 25, it just completely, there was no control. I wasn't what a lot of people think of alcoholics, because we are so conditioned to believe that alcoholics are bums underneath the bridge, asking for money. And that's not the case. There's a spectrum of it. And some of the worst alcoholics are very high functioning and have corporate level jobs and executive jobs and all of this stuff. And they drink every day. Now, because they're able to go and perform, does that make it any better for the people who are under the bridge?
Right.
So it's a disease, and it's terrible, and it rips families apart and all of that. But by the time I got to 29, at that point in my life, I moved in with my boyfriend. Him and I had been living together for a year and a half. That last night that I drank, it was my last shift as a bartender because I was transitioning into the medical field. So of course my boyfriend's like, please don't get hammered. Like, please don't get hammered. I was like, I won't. And then as soon as I got to work, I started ripping shots. So, the next morning I woke up, my best friend was like, cause she stayed the night that night, and she was like, Court, your cat's missing and Matt is really pissed. And I was like, okay. I said, well, we'll find the cat. So fast forward, Matthew comes downstairs. He was like, the cat's missing. He was like, and I'm done. He's like, you can continue drinking, but I'm not going to stick around you anymore. He's like, cause I don't want to live my life with my girlfriend standing over the bed saying she wants to kill me. And like, I can't blame the man, I can't blame the man because, or it was a man or a woman, like nobody wants to be put in that situation. So I really thought about it. The cat was missing for three days, and I made a pact to the universe. And I just said, like, if I find this cat, I will quit drinking. And that's what I did. But in that time of my 10 years with my love affair with alcohol, I really have to say, like I said, at 25, I knew that there was going to be a day that I was going to live life without alcohol. I just didn't know when or how it was going to take me there. I had 1,000 rock bottoms. People's rock bottoms are all different. Like your rock bottom could be really you just having severe anxiety the next day, So, I had a car repossessed. I eventually tried smoking crack a few times. So it's just like, I didn't really have a rock bottom.
Yeah.
I ended up in the hospital a couple times, ended up in jail a few times, sitting in the drunk tank. Like there was no distraught thing that had happened to me where it like took, only until I lost this cat for the second time. And that boyfriend who had cared a lot about saying that to me, which he's now my husband. And we still have our cat. We found her after 3 days. So like I said, but it's possible to change your life around in sobriety, and just that there's life after addiction.
Wow. Can you talk a little bit about how you transitioned from I mean, you weren't even a drinker to begin with, right? And then kind of casually going into that drinking phase, how that became to alcoholic. Because I know a lot of people think, okay, yeah, I'm drinking a lot, especially in that college phase, right? Because that's
Yeah.
when I really got into alcohol as well. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm drinking a lot. Maybe I have my crazy nights. I have my blackouts or whatever. Like, I can't remember necessarily what happened, but it's okay because I'm young, I'm partying, and I'm not an alcoholic. I'm just enjoying myself. So, like, how does it go from just that casual to alcoholic? And was that transition, I guess, did it happen quickly, or was it something that you even recognized for a while?
Oh, I recognized it. It was a progression. And that's the thing of that, what people don't understand about alcohol. Alcohol is a very addictive substance. And as we learned in 2020, um, alcohol is only good for disinfectant. And I am not a judgmental person. I bartend a couple days a week. I mean, not right now in these times, but I bartend a couple days a week. So I'm not a judgmental person. And like I said, not everybody has drinking problems, but alcohol, the long-term effects of alcohol use for anybody is not good. So really the progression of my whole thing was alcoholism ran in my family. That's why I was so against it. And then at 19, it was almost like I just rebelled and said F it and went with it and you fall into this habit and relationship that you have. And that's what progresses, because alcohol actually takes over in your brain and rewires your brain in a way of that is where the disease and all of that comes from. And there's a lot nowadays of how people look at, some people don't believe alcoholism is a thing and don't believe that it's a disease and, don't want to relate to that, which is all fine. But for me, that's how I look at it, because it's science, it's scientific and all of that. I mean, there's just some people who should never drink alcohol. And I am one of those people.
Right.
So really, it was a progression of me getting older and just how that relationship fit into my life during that time, because after a point, some of my girlfriends weren't getting blacked out with me every week because their life was evolving. And like mine was not. I was getting older, but my relationship and how I was still the same. And that's very common for anybody who has a alcohol use disorder, or whatever age they started drinking at. That's the mentality that they get stuck in. So for me, 19, that's how I was living my life, like a 19-year-old.
Since you mentioned that, I was just sitting here thinking, when you said the age you start drinking, I was sitting here thinking, well, damn, I started drinking in like middle school or something like that. And the ball's starting to roll and starting to think. I'm like, because me, come from where I come from, having an older brother and he's all into whatever, and me wanting to follow him. It's like my brother's smoking pot or whatever. So I'm like, what's that thing? I'll smoke it too. Not thinking that you can get addicted to it. And then that one joint comes into 5 joints where you're stuffing them and you're countlessly just getting high the rest of the day, where you're not really doing anything with your life. Like you mentioned, you're just stuck doing this and everybody else is moving on, but you're still that person who's just a weed head or whatever you want to call it.
I mean, it's true. Just like that. I actually was told that in my recovery, and I was like, well, damn, that makes it makes so much sense. Like, and it is true. So yeah.
And you had mentioned too that you had gotten to other drugs. So was that a progression from the alcohol, or was that just was that kind of like because of those you were around? How did that progression happen?
The progression to the drugs?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So what happened with the drugs was, and going back, I am a firm believer that like trauma is the gateway to any type of drug. And that's the thing. Like my drug of choice ended up being drinking. Now, would I have smoked crack if I was not drunk? And the answer is no. So drinking led me to make poor decisions. Drinking, would I have done cocaine sober? I will say I did that once in that active time. And I was like, this is terrible. Like, who does this without drinking? So like anytime I chose to, that relationship with cocaine, of experimenting, not experimenting, but getting into a relationship with cocaine for those couple of years, because I really loved it. That was all fueled from my drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Trying crack was fueled from my drink.
So how then how were you able to overcome, like, once you lost your cat and once your boyfriend, your now husband, was like, okay, that's it, like, I can't do this anymore, and you made that decision to stop? I mean, I feel like it just seems so easy, but it's not, right? So how did you take those steps to actually actively recover?
I took the steps by, well, one, I had to keep, from day one, I've always stayed connected to my why of why I needed to quit drinking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very important for anybody, because it's like, you staying connected to that is going to help you further and further and further along in your sobriety journey. But I just had to make that decision. And every day I just had to remember to myself and allow myself to remember what used to happen when I drank. I mean, there were some good times in my drinking. I'll never regret any of my drinking days, except for the only time that really I get like, kind of yucky, is about the drinking and driving.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of it, I have allowed myself to remember that. I wasn't sweeping that shit underneath the rug, because it was not going to help me in my recovery and not going to help me progress. So I really just took it a day at a time. It's very cliche, but it's true. A day at a time, and just remembered that I was doing it to better myself. And I had a constant reminder too of, like, with my husband and with Fiona, like, even to this day, sometimes when I'm petting her, I'm like, God, what if she would have never came back 8 years ago? Like, would I have continued drinking?
Right.
You know? So it's really those types of questions where you have to remember the people, if you care enough, that there are people around you are hurting because of your actions, even though you haven't like physically hurt them. Cause I always used to say that was an excuse. I'm like, I'm not hurting anybody. But it was in my active recovery when I noticed what my actions did do to people.
Yeah.
But I didn't get that until the clarity. So, and that comes in sobriety.
And how did, your transition into sobriety lead to your coaching business?
That was another progression for sure. I got into, so I really took the time, like 3 years of just working on myself, working on me. And then I got into health and fitness. I got into health and fitness coaching with an MLM, which is always a great place actually to start a business. It is. And I was doing that for a couple of years, and then just kind of my passion more laid in with sobriety. And I would have people reach out to me all the time, asking me what I did and all of that. And I kind of just felt like there was a need for more options of recovery besides just AA or rehab, because there's not really, up until this last couple of years, there hasn't been many options besides that. And not everybody affords to go to rehab. Rehab's very expensive, and a lot of insurances do not cover it. And then with 12-step programs, not everybody identifies with that and feels comfortable into that space. So really kind of how Sober Vibes came about was I went back to AA my third year of sobriety. And I sat at this woman's table. I did the steps that year because I didn't start off with AA. But what's wonderful about that program is they're always welcome you. You're always welcome, no matter where you are at your sobriety. And that summer I did the steps and I participated, and I sat there and listened to women, and they didn't really have much more for themselves besides just going to work and going to a meeting. And then that's kind of where Sober Vibes came about, where it's more of a lifestyle, and to celebrate that and to be able to connect with other women and whatnot, and even just going to partake in life, because we didn't get sober just to go to meetings and go to work. I got sober to live.
Mhm.
And that's kind of where my Sober Vibes brand came about. And all of that was from listening to what women needed.
Yeah. And I know that you talk a lot about, once the drinking stops, that doesn't mean the fun stops, right? And a lot of people think that that is the case. So what are the things that you do to have fun, or the things that you encourage your clients do to have fun outside of that?
Well, I like to say that fun is really a state of mind. Okay. Because if you look at it, and this is what I've told my clients before, like, does getting hammered in a blackout and pissing off your closest girlfriend, or waking up in jail, or waking up the next day where you have a 3-day hangover and your anxiety is so bad where you feel like you're going to die and need to go to the ER? How fun is that? Honestly, like, it's not fun. When you hear people talk about their hangovers, like it's like they had the worst hangover. So really, you have to get your mindset wrapped around that drinking. Yeah, it might have brought you like a connection to a person, or it might have made you feel like you could step outside of yourself and not, but like, was that really all truthful? In the end, it's kind of a facade, because why can't you have that without alcohol? And you can. But so really, I suggest to people, clearly COVID times is hard right now of things to do. Okay. But that's where you have to find some type of hobby, because hobbies are fun. And I had to Google hobbies when I got sober because I had none. Like, legit, I Googled hobbies, and I told my husband, Matt, at the time, and him and I laugh about that to this day, because he was like, I cannot believe you had to Google hobbies. I said, but I didn't have anything else. I didn't do anything else besides drink and work. So I really just tell my clients, and to anybody, like, you need to do something that kind of sparks joy to you, or go back into your childhood of like, what was fun for you in your childhood? And that's where I got curious with in my recovery about what is fun to me. And that goes back to Googling, because baking was on there. And I was like, oh my God, I used to bake when I was a kid all the time. My parents were divorced. I would go to my dad's on the weekend. My dad didn't really have any money because he, child support and all of that. And so, but he would buy like cupcakes, brownies, cookies for me to do something. And that was fun for me, So I went back to things I like doing, and definitely baking was one of them. I got really into crafting, keeping my hands busy. That was fun for me. Other things of getting out of the house and to do, again, not in COVID times, going to a museum. You don't need alcohol to participate in a museum, to walk around at an art museum. There's tons of stuff, I guarantee, in your backyard to do in the city that you live in. You just never looked up into it. Like, you could go do like a art painting class. Like, you just have to get curious of like what fun is for you. Walking outside to me now is fun. Going to a restaurant because I'm present and I actually can eat a meal and not being like hungover. That's fun for me. So really, it's just all of your definition and your mindset of what is fun.
And getting to explore new things, right? Because things that maybe you were doing, but you weren't fully present, like you just said, or just something that you've never tried before, and kind of figure out what it is you actually like and who you are again.
Exactly. And that's where you have to you got to get comfortable with yourself. It does take a little bit, but in exploring that kind of stuff that we just talked about, that's where you figure out who you are and get comfortable with yourself. And it is true. It's just like, I mean, I swear to God, you guys, on a Sunday, every Sunday, sometimes I still get emotional, because I'm like, I am just so happy I'm not sitting here on my couch dry heaving.
Yes.
And I get to participate in life. So it really is how I know mindset's very hard for people, but you got to look at it. You have to switch it around of how you really look at it, especially if you have an issue with alcohol. Like, that relationship with alcohol is probably hurting you way more than it's helping you.
Exactly.
What was your social life like when you stopped drinking?
For me, I those first 2 years were a little bit difficult just because I was kind of white knuckling it, and, you know, I still participated, but I didn't do that much. But I would still go out to dinner with some girlfriends. You know, so my husband and I still would go out to eat. Um, I did happy hour a couple times with my coworkers because I was still in my 9 to 5 job at the pain clinic, but those were difficult for me. And that's kind of sometimes what people have to understand. Like, you have to sacrifice a little bit in the beginning. Like, now, if I've gone to a happy hour with a person, with a girlfriend, or it does not bother me one bit. Like I said, I've bartended and it does not bother me.
Mhm.
But that first year or two, it elevated my anxiety. It was hard to be around that, but I did it. So,
Yeah. I could
but
imagine.
then there was a girlfriend that I would go, actually, because she got sober like a month after I did. And then her and I would meet up for coffee twice a month, you know?
Mhm. And I like the fact that you brought up that, you know, within that first little bit that it was hard to be around kind of those triggers, right? But then as you kind of got used to it, it progressed and you're able to be around that again now. And I think it's the same thing like with us being on the nutrition side. A lot of clients who are used to maybe binge eating, or maybe they have certain food triggers, it's the same thing. Like, being around those triggers for a while is really difficult. But once you learn kind of what's triggering you and how to kind of go around that, then you're able to be around those again without having those same feelings.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and when you discover, because it's not, and that is one thing that my friends have told me. They're like, you quitting drinking doesn't change your personality. You're still you. But I
Mhm.
have noticed in my recovery that I am a person who is okay being by myself.
Mhm.
And then I actually recharge and refuel by disconnecting and chilling out and watching shows for a day and like not talking to anybody.
Mhm.
And that's something, and I think sometimes too, if you learn that earlier, like I've tried with my clients to explain to them to learn who you are a little bit earlier. And the Enneagram system is good with that too. It's a personality test, if you guys haven't heard of that. But just understanding that, or an introvert, extrovert,
Mhm.
it helps you then become more like, okay, I am an extrovert, introvert, and I need these days to sit here and recharge by myself and not talk to anybody. And then tomorrow I will be better.
Right.
So, but
That's
yeah,
great.
those early triggers, sometimes you just have to sacrifice a little bit.
Yes.
Mhm.
I can definitely relate to that because when I guess with my own sobriety, because I had my addiction with marijuana and stuff like that. And it took an arrest for me to finally get the hint where I'm taking these drug classes and she's asking me, well, how often do you smoke? And I'm sitting there telling her the stuff and she's looking at me like, are you serious? And I'm like, this is a problem. This is an issue and stuff like that. And then with being around family and friends out casually, and then they be doing and still trying to hand it to me like, come on, man, just do it. Just take one hit. And like, you sure? And then as time goes on, they was like, man, we're real proud of you, man. I don't know how you do it, how you just stopped all of a sudden. And that's the person that made me stop.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. See? But and some people they're like, oh, the ultimatum thing doesn't work. But it's like, for some people it needs to happen,
Mhm.
because it's like, okay, you get arrested. Did that change anything? Because sometimes too, with the whole system, that's just looked upon as a punishment. And then you get what you're supposed to, I mean, I could go on about the court systems for days,
Yes.
but the court systems is garbage. And how they treat addiction. They treat it as a punishment and not a mental health thing. So, but yeah, so it takes our partners to be like, come on, like, this is not a way to live. So I like that.
Yeah,
That's
and
great.
from the partner perspective, being there for him, like, you know, I told him, I said, your past doesn't define your future, right?
Mhm.
So I'm okay with your past, but that can't continue to be your future and
Right.
still be here, because that's not going to be my future.
Right.
That was
And
a
that's a
game
great
changer.
boundary.
It's a
Yeah.
game changer because normally, like if you're with somebody else, you're doing it, they just may be behind it or they take part in it, and it's like, yeah, keep doing it or whatever. And then you find somebody who's telling you that you can stop and it'll still be okay because I love you for you, and
Hmm.
it's just like, wow, you're dead.
Yep. So are you ever around friends now who still smoke or no?
Yes, all the time.
Okay. And isn't it crazy? So how long have you been sober from weed for?
I guess it's probably over 10 years.
Well, yeah, we've been married 10
Congratulations.
years, so it's definitely
Yes.
been over that.
Any triggers from that?
Well, not really. I think about it all the time. Or it's funny being in North Carolina, like when it's fall time, they're burning leaves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just certain smells. You be like, is that what I think it is, or something like that? Because even for my best friend's wedding, he's over here worried about where all the rest of the groom is and everything, and he's over here all nervous and stuff. We got like 5 minutes and people haven't showed up, and he's over here all nervous, like, man, bro, can you roll? Can you still roll up for me? I'm like, just calm down, just relax.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah. Will that ever bother you if it gets legalized in North Carolina? If the state legalizes it?
That's a good question. It all
Because
depends
all of
on
these
what she
states are.
says. It all depends on what she says.
Because all of these states are legalizing it
That's
now.
true.
So.
That is a big question. I think because of the way that it affected us in the beginning
Yeah.
of our relationship, I think that would still be an issue. Now, there are certain things like CBD products, as far as lotions, teas, things like that. We do use those. So there are certain things, but as far as the difference in his personality when
Yeah.
you add in the THC part of
Mhm.
that becomes the issue.
Yeah. Understood.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit because you were talking about, your confidence, right? Because you said that the alcohol kind of boosted your confidence and made you more open and able to communicate and do things that you weren't, open to doing before. And when I was in college and I started to drink, that was really me because I had always been super shy.
Yeah.
And when I started drinking and I was hanging out with my roommates and stuff like this, and I was like, oh, like this is fun. Like I can interact. I don't mind talking to new people. I'm able to, just socialize more, and this is cool, right? So, but then after I stopped drinking, I was like, I have to build my confidence on my own and not rely on a substance. So, have you noticed the same thing for you and your clients, and how do you work with them on boosting their confidence outside of the substance?
Well, for anybody, personal development. I mean, for anybody, because all of us humans, unless you're some type of sociopath, there's confidence issues, and I'm really, really a firm believer of personal development and learning about yourself, reading books. Like if you're having an issue of that, of just reading and learning and taking that, because personal development with me, I started really getting into that about 6 years ago, and that has definitely changed me and has brought me more confidence, and just confidence with yourself comes in too of just if you have if you work out, I mean, you feel better when you work out for a day, right? So like you're kind of like strut a little bit different. If you eat better, you feel better. So that's also going to make you feel better on the inside. So it really is kind of working on the inside, and with personal development, meditation, getting yourself into a good workout flow. You don't have to work out every day, but you get 5 days a week. Cool. Eating better. And that just helps you mentally as well. So those are those are huge ones that I live by. So the eating one in times of COVID has been a little bit different for me, but
It's been hard for everyone. Yes.
Right.
So, tell us, what would be your 3 tips for someone right now, especially during this pandemic, right? With the way everything is going, the stress levels, what would be your 3 tips for someone really looking to become sober?
So 3 tips. I'm going to go back to the number 1 of remembering your why. Okay. And just remember that, because what happens too with the addicted mind, and you could go 30 days without drinking, because the drinking too, it's a reward system. So you
Mhm.
could go 30 days without drinking and be like, yes, I made it 30 days. I don't have a problem, and fall back into it.
Mhm.
It's kind of one thing of why I don't get with the dry January or sober October, for many reasons. And that's one of them, because I've worked with way too many women who said that they tried the dry January, and then day 31, they were drinking just as much as they were before they quit. Because as you guys know, it's a reward system. Like, same
Yes.
thing with food. So definitely remember your why, because your why is never going to change. That relationship you have with alcohol is never going to change. It's just, you get in this shame cycle and loop and all of that, and it does not progress. So 1, remembering your why. 2, eliminating alcohol from your house if you can. You got to get it out. You have to get it out and kind of make a plan for yourself of like, don't be tempted by it, and make a plan of like taking it a day at a time. And that you're not going to take it 30 days at a time.
Mhm.
You're going to just work on today, and then tomorrow, and then the next day. And then you're going to get to 5 days and be like, well, shit, I just got 5 days sober. And
Mhm.
just little by little adds up each day. And the 3rd is support. If you can find yourself some type of community, a coach, a therapist, AA, any online support people, because there's a whole slew of sobriety and recovery support. But you need support because you have to be accountable to somebody else besides yourself, or even somebody else who has not enabled you for however many years. Because the enabling process is it's hard to say to a person like, oh, I'm going to quit drinking, and they're the ones giving you alcohol,
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And for our listeners out there who are struggling with this right now, how can they reach out and work with you?
you can visit me at my website, CourtneyRecovered.com. There, I have a podcast. It's Sober Vibes. That's VIBES. Podcast you can find on iTunes and Apple. Instagram, Sober Vibes. I mean, I'm very present on Instagram. My website, you can email me, sobervibes@gmail.com, and just, and I do free consults, and we can just chat and see if we're a fit, and just kind of go from there. Because sometimes you just need somebody to listen to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's hard. It's very hard. These times of COVID are very hard. You have people out of their structured routine. You have people who are in isolation. But I have said from the get, this would be the easiest time to quit drinking. Simply for the fact, for women, there is no social aspect to this.
Yes.
Because for women, it's very social.
Mhm.
And you can also because people get scared, like, well, what am I going to say to people? It's like, dude, I'm not drinking. I want to keep my immune system up good.
Right.
I mean, this whole year, that's all we've heard is about immune system.
Yes.
And guess what drinking does to the immune system?
Oh, yeah. It plummets. Yes.
It's like your anxiety and depression. It's terrible.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And you also have a book too, right? Because
I
love
did.
the name of your book.
The Ultimate Guide to Sobriety.
Yes.
The bitch wanted me dead.
Yes.
Yes. It's so wild because sometimes, I don't know if you guys feel like that with stuff you do, like that you forget about it, but sometimes I forget about that ebook. But yes, I launched that ebook back in the fall time, and it's really getting you that first year of sobriety, just kind of what to expect. This was not like a memoir, not that type of thing, but I gave the readers 10 different topics that they might be thinking right now of like, okay, what's this going to be like? Like, Jesus, what's sober sex going to be like? I'm going to kind of talk about it and then give tips. So, but I took like the 10 main categories that you could think of getting sober, because I noticed there wasn't a lot of books out there like that. Like, yeah, there's like, okay, this is how you're going to deal with PAWS, which is post-acute withdrawal syndrome. And, and a lot of people write their journeys of overcoming, but like I'm the type of person like, give me the facts.
Right.
What am I up against?
Right.
Am I, like
the stuff
friends.
I really care about.
Yeah, and I write stuff about your relationships and your friendships. And like the honesty is you're going to lose some friends.
Mm-hmm.
But in your sobriety and recovery, you're going to meet some new people because you'll start attracting what you are.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are going to show up in your life. So
yeah, that's a huge thing that I've noticed in my personal life is, thinking back about all the friends that I've gained and lost throughout the years and throughout my professional and personal growth. And I'm looking back at it, and in the time being, it may have been sad, right? I'm like, oh, well, why did I lose them? And now looking back, I'm like, I understand why we're not friends anymore. Our paths don't go the same direction. And if I did, I would be held back. So it's good for me to move on.
I never had that problem. I was just like, fuck them. The hell with it.
I like that attitude. I mean, and that's sometimes what you got to do it. Like just bye. Right.
Yes.
So yeah, it is true. You just don't, some people you won't align with, and that's okay. And you grieve that. I'm also a huge person who talks about grieving the relationship you had with alcohol and your old drinking self, because there's an identity that you have attached with who you were with drinking. Like I was the party girl. That's what people wanted out of me until midnight. And I turned into a gremlin and started throwing chairs and screaming at people. Okay. Like, but people loved me up until that point. And then it was like, okay, who wants to deal with her now? But I had to really grieve that person in that relationship with alcohol.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's crazy because like when you do that and you have to find your new identity, right? So you have to grieve yourself, your old self, and then learn who you really are without that. Yeah.
Yep. But it's a beautiful process. It is, whatever journey you're in, it is a beautiful thing to see yourself. Like I was a very insecure, not confident person. And I kind of am like now with people like, fuck them. Like, if you don't like me, it's cool. Yeah. I'm good with it. Sometimes if I've got hate, because we know what it's like to get some hate from some haters out there on your social media shit, your emails, your podcasts. It's like, well, then I am not your cup of tea. I don't care. You're the one, you're giving out. This takes more energy for you to send me an email of your hate than it does. Like you're spending way too much time on this. Like that I affect you this much.
Yes, exactly.
So
this has been amazing, Courtney, but we have some rapid fire questions for you before you go. And since they are a health and nutrition company, we have to pull in a little bit of that in here. So
that's fine. I'm down with that.
What is your preference? Okay. Weights or cardio?
Oh man. Okay. This is a two-parter. I love cardio, but like I love that cardio in the zone sweating, but weights, the benefits of weights are like so much better, but I'm like more of the cardio, but the weights are amazing. If that makes sense.
It does. It makes perfect sense. Favorite fruit?
Watermelon.
Yes. Favorite vegetable?
God. I'll go with carrots.
Okay. Favorite comfort food?
Oh my God. All of it. Favorite comfort food? I don't like a cupcake or a cake, something like that,
And first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word vegan?
Like a picture of a little piggy, like I go back to like a pig.
Yes.
And like thinking of them getting slaughtered. I've gone vegan. I'll go through phases where I won't eat any type of animal product or, so I give you guys a huge, huge, huge credit for like sticking with it and all of that.
Oh, thank you. And I love that answer. That's the first time we've gotten that.
What have people usually said?
It's generally more related to the food. We've also gotten ooh, but I love the pig.
Yeah, I just think of like a little piggy.
Yeah.
Because it's terrible what they do to pigs.
It is. It's awful. It's awful. I could get off on a whole tangent on that. And most importantly, where do you get your strength from?
Ooh, I have to say, the women, like my grandma, my grandmas were both very strong women. My one grandma quit drinking when my oldest brother was born because she had her own issues with alcohol. My one other grandma, when she was 19, she wanted to get out of Mount Airy, North Carolina, and so the only way for her to get out, she joined the Marine Corps and was a Lady
Wow.
Marine. And then, she did volunteer work for the American Red Cross. So like that kind of was always instilled in me, just like the women in my life, my sister. So
That's incredible. Very good.
yeah.
Well, thank you again, Courtney, for coming on. We've had such a wonderful time with you today.
Thanks, guys. This was fun.